Welcome in to Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me. It is without further ado, I introduce you to our 13th season. Wow, where has the time passed? Well, I'll tell you, it's been 4 years since I started this little bitty show that has grown into and blossomed into, out of the toddler stage, into the amazing 4 years. Talked to a lot of different people. We've almost covered the United States now. We're, I think, about 7 to 10 states away from covering every state, which was my goal when I started. A friend asked me recently, he said, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I said, I don't know, because there's so many great stories still out there to tell. There's so many amazing shoes still to try on. But for those of you who don't know, who maybe don't know me personally, or maybe this is your first time tuning in, let me just give you a little bit of background, a little bit of history. My name, Neil, actually means champion, although to date I've never won a championship. The second thing about my name that's kind of unique is I was actually named after Neil Armstrong, the first man to walk on the moon. He had this famous quote. In fact, Neil, why don't you just say it the way you would say it?
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It's that one small step for man, that one giant leap for mankind. It got me thinking about this season. What do I want to say? Where do we want to go? And I guess for me, where I want to go now is this idea of a footprint, an impact, an imprint, a moment. So that's what we're going to talk about. I've found some amazing guests that are going to be talking about this moment, this imprint, this footprint, this impact that has been made in their life. And to me, there's nothing greater than taking that imprint and taking that impact, taking that moment, and doing something positive with it. So join me, would you, as we begin season number 13, year number 4 of Other People's Shoes. Lucas, take it away.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for hitting play today. Truly appreciate that. If you haven't done so already, why have you not? Jumped right over to your favorite social media of choice, OPS Podcast Show. That's where you can find us on the socials. That, of course, being Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Yes, Elon has revolutionized Twitter, so we're sticking around. We're hanging around. And you can also find us at opspodcast.com, where you can hear past, present, and future shows on demand anytime. You know, there's like 4 years worth of shows there. It's hard to believe we can actually say that now. 4 years worth of shows there. There's a lot to listen to. So if you're bored and taking a road trip with me out to the great state of Texas today, which is where you find us, where we find our guests, I should say, and find us, because, I mean, hello, who wouldn't want to be out in Texas right now? It's probably good barbecue. We probably got some amazing things going on. But here's a first, and I'm going to giggle about this already. I've never had a guest dress for us, because we always say, you know, we're doing this video thing, but we're never putting it out on YouTube. We're just not that show. So if you're looking for us to be that show, we're not going to be that show. But I've never had a guest wear a polo, a light blue polo at that, to show up for the interview. So that is a first, and we're going to take full advantage of that. Help me welcome in my new friend, Kevin. Kevin, how are you today?
Man, fantastic. I appreciate you having me, Neil. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to connecting and adding value with your audience. I appreciate it.
Well, I feel like you've already added some value by the polo. You know, you got it even buttoned up tight all the way to the top. So not even the collar kind of flayed open. You got it to the top. So that's awesome.
I had to come correct. You know, I talked to a guy, Neil, and he was talking about my Sooners pretty bad, and thought I'd surprise him with little Carolina blue.
Well, I'll tell you what, but I feel at home already. So thank you for welcoming in your shoes today. So let's get to that. My favorite question to ask, of course, of all time is this: what size shoes do you wear?
Wow. I wear a size 10.
Okay. And is there a certain style or brand that we like maybe more than another?
I love a nice Nike or New Balance tennis shoe that's comfortable. And that size 10 sometimes in life can feel like a 12 or a 13. So I need something comfortable.
Well, I'll tell you about Nikes that I have not been able to really get around. And I actually want to talk to somebody at Nike, because here's the thing for me. Like, I wear a 10.5 normally, 10.5, 11. But like, I put on their 11 and it feels like a 10.5. It's so tiny. tiny on me. And I don't have dude feet, as my friends point out. They're like, you kind of have girl feet, they're little. You're 6'2", 2 something plus, and you got this 10.5, 11 that you're rocking. What's going on there? I'm like, I don't know. That's how God made me. I don't know.
Yeah, mine don't fit very well either. I have blocked feet. But I love the Nike is just comfortable. New Balance is my go-to. So yeah, I'm with you in that boat. Sometimes they fit, sometimes they don't.
But my man, you're a good fit. And that's what we loved about you. And we loved your energy. So let's get into this. Like I am just perplexed. Once again, we throw it out to the socials. We kind of cast that proverbial net out there to see what people kind of gravitate towards and see who kind of comes to the net and like, hey, I want to be a part of that. What about this footprint, this impact moment for you kind of gravitated you towards our way? And then maybe share that moment with us if you wouldn't mind.
Man, born and raised in Oklahoma, grew up a sports fanatic, and I kind of struggled early on as a young boy trying to become a man with self-identity. I started working in a juvenile detention center and day treatment facility, and that's where the imprint began for me.
I can imagine how that created an imprint for you and obviously an impact and maybe even left some footprints in your life, as far as inmates that maybe you got to interact with. And I mean, let's face it, they're not going anywhere. You kind of have a captive audience. And so I would imagine there have been those moments that you've been able to kind of speak life, as my good friend Toby Max says, speak life into someone's life. Maybe speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. My imprint moment, there are several of them. In a nutshell, when I got planted working in a juvenile detention center, I quickly realized that I didn't want the juveniles or the children that I was working with in a day treatment center, I didn't want them to feel that pain that I felt. I wanted to be able to be a pinpoint or a point of contact in their life and just to help them feel seen, feel heard, encourage them, pour life into them. And really in the end, Neil, they were really pouring into my life as well.
Life choices have prevented me from being incarcerated in any form or fashion. I mean, there was one time, growing up, I stole a pack of baseball cards for a Will Clark specialized card. Will Clark, former Giant, first baseman. Loved him. And somehow miraculously I got this card and I felt so terrible and just, I'm a person of faith, convicted by the Holy Spirit. Obviously I didn't pay attention to the 8th commandment, which is thou shalt not steal. It's just bypass that. When you want something, right? And I remember taking it back to the manager of the little PX commissary that we were on a military base. And I said, hey, listen, I stole this the other day and I feel terrible about it. And he said, okay, well, thanks for doing the right thing. Don't worry. You did the right thing. We're going to kind of slap you on the wrist. Don't do it again. Here's the thing he didn't know. Everything was back but that Will Clark card, okay? Let's just be honest. That stayed with me. He didn't need that back. But years later, I'm trading this card away because I was so guilt-strickenly just convicted. I couldn't look at it any longer. I couldn't even enjoy it because I had stolen it.
Wow.
And so for me, again, never been incarcerated, never even had, I've had speeding tickets. Who hasn't? But I've never been on, in jail for any period of time. And so for me, help me understand why, one, you stay in a job for 21 years, seeing a lot of just, let's face it, garbage, not the people, but I would imagine a lot of garbage situations.
Sure. All along the way, especially working with the juveniles, because that's where I really cut my teeth. 14, 15, 16, 17 males and females at the time. What was impactful for me was just seeing all the various different backgrounds, 2-parent homes, broken homes, single parent homes. And we have all these labels and dividers we want to place people in. And I started realizing I was raised in a church, youngest of 4 boys. My mother was a piano player. My father was military veteran. And although I had a phenomenal upbringing, I still was empty inside trying to find myself. So when I began working in the juvenile detention center, even though the children had allegedly got in trouble, I still was able to connect with them on the preference of they were empty, I was empty. How do we evolve? How do we come out of this cocoon to pursue a better life?
And how do they do that? Because again, I'm thinking of myself. I'm just trying to put myself in an inmate's role, which is really hard, obviously, because I have no basis of that. But I would imagine, again, it's not a fun place. I mean, I've seen Shawshank Redemption. I mean, I know that's probably not a great representation of the prison system, perhaps, but that is a point of reference for me. It's a good movie. But in that, right, there's the process of getting checked in. There's the process of mealtime. There's the process of getting used to your surroundings and making friends and making the wrong friends and seeing all that. So for you, again, how do you have an impact there and make an imprint there on the inmates, not take it home with you? How did you do that?
That was a process for me. Sometimes you can be in a picture frame and not realize you're in the picture. That's where my beautiful wife came to my rescue a lot of days, a lot of nights. But for people that are incarcerated, whether it's in a juvenile detention center, a treatment facility, or in prison, it's such a chaotic environment of a trauma center. You can lose yourself real easily just trying to survive. So I was able to put together a couple frameworks to just be a great listener, to be available for them in the most darkest moments of their life, difficult transitions in their life, just trying to be available and be a good listener. It's something it's a little unheard of, but that was my background. Wanting to see people win. I get a rush. I get a joy seeing other people win, resuscitate their life, no matter what background they're coming from. But we want to ensure that we never take a person's hope away from them.
Well, because let's face it, some of those people there, they've probably been in jail before, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. It becomes a vicious cycle. And that's why I believe that, yes, your journey to rehabilitation, to living a better life, it may start alone because truly change comes from the inside. You have to be willing to change. But for me, I believe in order to grow, you have to have someone come alongside you and walk with you, mentor, ask great questions. You ask them great questions. And in that communication, in that relationship, you can start to see a change and then build enough courage to change in the middle of chaos situation.
But Kevin, here's the thing, and I'm just guessing this because, again, I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with this. So I'm going to lean heavily into you and your experience with this. I'm guessing a lot of those young men that you had an opportunity to watch, guide, instruct, kind of see day to day, a lot of them, I would imagine, probably didn't come from a great father figure home. A father figure never really made that footprint moment or that impact moment or that imprint, or maybe they did make an imprint, but it was a negative one. And like, this is how you do life, Johnny. I'm not going to show you anything. I'm just going to leave. Did you encounter that at all? And if so, how did you being a father kind of maybe help fill some of those needs and roles for those men?
I encountered that all along the way, just trying to communicate a message of redemption, restoration. Yes, you probably have made a mistake, but it's not the end of your life. Your life is now meaning not over with. And so just trying to be that positive reinforcement while at the same time teaching, showing that rules and regulations are in place for a reason. However, you can restore your life, redesign your life, and live a life of practicing good citizenship. And it all began with communication, whether it was with the juvenile or working inside of the prison with adult males. For me, I quickly learned the process was the same. The adult males were just the older juveniles that I encountered early in my career, but the process was the same. Will you listen to me? Will you really, truly care for me? And that's really what continued to drive me was people don't care how much you know until they really know how much you care.
Maya Angelou, I think, said that pretty well. But here's the thing for me is I've seen movies, I've watched enough crime drama shows that I know that eventually when you get arrested, you're fingerprinted. What is so significant to you about that fingerprinting aspect?
Yeah, the fingerprint, man, that's a signature trademark for me. For one, you have no idea how important. And so if I could just ask a question would be, if you would just look at your hand right now, you have something in your hand right now that no one other person walking this earth has. And in fact, you've had it your entire life. What is it? It's fingerprints. I utilize that often. I use it often, communicate it often, that no matter what kind of situation you're in, going through or coming out of, you can look at your hand and draw strength from knowing that your specific fingerprint was designed uniquely for you, created for you, and you can draw strength from that, knowing that your life has real meaning and real purpose, even in the midst of finding yourself in a difficult situation.
I'm going to be the cynic for a minute. It always feels like there's always a cynic in the room somewhere. I don't know why. I just have always encountered that any place I've been. You got Eeyore over in the corner, right? Tigger's trying to have a great time, and then Eeyore's like, well, it's going to rain tomorrow. We're not going to have a picnic. Come on, Eeyore. Think about the fun we could have in the rain. Nobody can't because he's Eeyore. But listen, let me just be candid here. I'm blown away by what appears to be your joy. I'm blown away what appears to be your optimism. That can't just come from Kevin, and he didn't just pick that up at Costco on aisle 6 next to the gallon of mayonnaise and the blue polos. They're just together because it seems like a good fit. Where does that come from?
Right.
Where's that optimism, that joy? Where does it come from? Because obviously, again, I'm sure you didn't have it your whole life.
I did not. And even being a person of faith, early on in my career, I used to tell people I work at or my job is. But as I continued to see young boys, grown men come home from prison, redesign their life, live a life of good citizenship, get married, become an entrepreneur, or become the best employee that you could actually hire, I started realizing I had been planted in this environment to provide joy, hope, and be a light in a dark place. And I found joy in serving there once I started seeing statistically how many men were being successful upon release. Because truly, I believe you were talking about rehabilitation earlier. I believe rehabilitation begins at arrest. I believe rehabilitation begins the minute you hit that treatment door. And it's so chaotic. But if you can zone in on, this is not what I want to do with my life. It's not where I want to be with my life. Get in some educational programming, learn a trade, start studying and reading. I believe your life can be turned around completely. So seeing people be successful, turn around through reentry and redesign their life, that continuously reminded me that it wasn't a job for me. I was planted in those environments just to be a light in a dark place.
Well, again, I applaud that, because again, there would be those days, I would imagine, no matter how much faith you have, no matter how much, I would even say, jacked up on Jesus, no matter how much you have of that, there is still an element that comes into play where you're like, and I just don't want to do it anymore. I just don't have the energy to go one more time around. Jojo, the guy that just doesn't seem to want to participate or get along, or, he keeps fighting and he doesn't realize he's only hurting himself. When you feel like you've hit the end of the road with somebody, or maybe you never feel like that, I don't know. But how do you still try to turn that around to try to at least say, come on, man, come around?
Yeah, I think there are several different ways to kind of look at that, or I looked at that throughout my career. One was through direct communication. I'm an encourager by nature. I love to encourage you. I want to see you win. However, I realize you can't save and win for everyone more than they want to win for themselves. And so sometimes that's where you were sharing earlier about the father figure. That's where I just had to be consistent with showing up for work, be consistent in modeling what they might be looking for, maybe what they need. They can see it in me as I'm talking to someone else, not necessarily speaking with them. Because, in life, someone is always watching. And so just to be that positive influence in a moment's time can give someone hope and inspire them to change. And when they see it consistently, then over time, they'll take your borrowed belief and internalize it and really start to want to change for themselves. So for me, it was always looking for ways to connect first and then listen, and then try to lead them to a place where they wanted to go and live a better, productive life.
I don't know how big you are, but I would imagine working in corrections, you got to kind of be a bit of a big guy, a little intimidating in some respects.
It helps. I have a mean frown.
You're like, I have a really good anger face. It's really good. Super good. My scowl is better than The Rock. But here's where I'm at. Even with all that said, I would imagine there is still an element of fear that comes in your job. Now, I know, listen, fear is a liar, but listen, you're dealing with people at any given moment who could hurt you, who could band together and do physical harm to you and your fellow coworkers. Is that a thing?
Every second of the day, it is a thing. It's a real thing. And for 21 years, working in the adult prison system for 21 years, I had one incident in 21 years. That incident, it was kind of funny. I was working in an area where the prisoners are in their cells for 23 hours a day. They only come out for 1 hour to go to shower, to go to rec. And my coworker on 2-row upstairs, he was arguing with the prisoner. And they were going back and forth. And the prisoner yelled out loud, "When you come back, I promise I'm going to get you." And so we were feeding lunch. So we go in, there's 84 guys in the pod, and it's just like a diamond. And you go around the bottom row, feed them, go up, come across the 2-row, feed them. Then you give them 15 minutes to eat. But when we went back in to go pick up the trays, my coworker was in front of me. So he was opening their bean chute where they hand their trays through. And I was behind them closing the trays. And as we came across this prisoner's door, my coworker ducked and I turned to my back and I caught everything that was in his cup. That's the only incident in 21 years from a fear perspective, physically being threatened or something dangerous. That's the only thing that I had. And I attribute that to treating them because they're still people. That's still someone's father, still someone's uncle, still someone's brother, and just trying to work and enhance my communication skills along with the Lord's protection. I believe that is the sole reason why I didn't have any of those interactions. But the driving thing for me was returning home safely to my family every single day. That was my driving force.
That's the part that's mind-blowing to me, is that, when you're talking about being in a prison system, again, I'm just imagining the worst of the worst. Guys that have been in there for gang violence, maybe, or domestic violence against women, or maybe have hurt children in some respect.
All the above.
Maybe even murder.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that would freak me out, is we got Stevie over here who just got here for murder. And if you crossed him, could he try to murder you? I don't know how you could have a smile every day, and maybe it wasn't every day. At least carry yourself with maybe a smile on the inside saying, hey, man, I am here kind of doing the Lord's work from the sound of it, without standing with a billboard, every lunchtime, hey, come to Jesus and get your chocolate melt. Were you allowed to in any way share of your faith or share of your faith journey with folks, or was that frowned upon?
It was frowned upon. However, there are a lot of things in life where when you see someone, instantly, wow, he look like he owns a business. Or look at Neil, man, you can just look at his smile and tell he loves life. And so I always tried to live my life in a way where people would say, if they didn't say anything else, they would say, hey, man, that dude is okay. Leading a lifestyle like that, working with the juveniles prepared me to go into the danger zone that you speaking about inside the prison. So by the time I started working with the adults in prison, where it's the most dangerous, the most chaotic, I knew how to maneuver. They're just angry men that are in a box. They can't go home. So what advantage am I gaining by going in, yelling, screaming, and cussing and adding to the fire in their life? So I chose to be the opposite, to be the guy standing in the corner, to be a sounding board. And that served several different areas. It allowed my supervisors and the wardens to know, hey, when Turner goes down to this specific area, we won't have to worry about that area because usually he doesn't have problems in his area. So it just came down to really connecting beneath the uniform, beneath my uniform, beneath their uniform. They were still men with the heart. And I just wanted them to know that there is an opportunity for redemption, for reconciliation and restoration in life.
I think so many times we can sense a presence about somebody that is different than what we're around.
Sure.
Why is it you're laughing when everyone else is not? I just think so many times that we can just tell. But if I were going to ask you this question, now, listen, I'm not best friends with him, but I could be. There's this guy named Jeff Bezos. I heard he's pretty wealthy. He's pretty rich. You heard of that guy? You buy anything from his little company called Amazon?
They ring the doorbell quite frequently.
They know your house
Yes.
well. Okay, good. So he's got stupid money is what I call it. Money that he'll never probably really ever have to sit down and okay, let me see. I just spent that money. He probably doesn't have a checkbook that he's ledger and all that nonsense. I'm imagining. But if for one reason or another, I was able to say to you, Kevin, I got Jeff Bezos' checkbook. He let me say I can spend it on whatever I want and do whatever I want with it. And I gave you the opportunity with his checkbook to fix our prison system. Because let's face it, I've heard a lot of people say it's broken. I got to be candid. I've never really spoken to somebody in we'll say in the industry, lack of better wording, in that environment. So this is fun for me. But if I gave you his money and I say you can fix it, you can do whatever you want with it, where do you start? Is there any way to fix it?
I would not start with prison reformation. I would begin with prison transformation. The United States has more than 2 million people incarcerated, largest in the world. Here in Texas, there are more than 200,000 people in prison, men and women. There are close to 14,000 people on parole just in my county alone. But the biggest statistic for me right now, close to 95% of all women and men incarcerated in prison will return to our communities. While I know there's a lot of talk about prison reform, I'm more concerned about equipping the men and women that are incarcerated. And I'm a believer in justice. If you're out here doing wrong, you've come through the court system, found guilty, you're in prison, I'm a big proponent of the justice system. However, at the same time, for the men and women that are due to come back to our community cities and be our neighbors, I am more inclined to see them equipped before they come home to become productive citizens than I am for them to come home with no skills, no opportunity to redesign their life, and just reoffend and go back to prison. That's not doing them any good. It's certainly not doing our children any good. And so that's where I would begin, is I would begin with the transformation of women and men returning home from prison so that they could become viable leaders and assets in our community.
Because let's face it, one mistake should not define our life.
Absolutely.
But I think so many times that one mistake defines our life forever.
It does.
I think of a guy like Aaron Hernandez. For those that don't know, I mean, I don't know how you don't. I mean, he was at Florida for a long time, by the way, with a guy named Tim Tebow, which is a name catching for those. But he ends up going to jail for a murder of one of his good friends. And then there is allegedly, while he was at Florida, he may have done more murders, but he ends up taking his own life in prison. And to me, it's sad. And I watched the number of documentaries that they've had on Aaron Hernandez. I'm not by any means an expert, but I look at one man making a very terrible mistake at a very bad moment in his life, and it changed him forever. But what I hear you say is, hey, that one mistake, that doesn't have to define you. There is something greater in you that can come out of you.
Absolutely.
Now, again, I ask this, where does that come from in your mind? How does somebody get and possess that? Because there's a lot of people out there that have made stupid choices and a lot of regretful people out there. Somebody right now might be listening saying, you know what? I've made some bad choices. I've maybe never gone to jail, but maybe I've had some bad choices with my kids, or, you know, I said a really stupid thing to my dad and I can't get it back again. What advice would you give him in this moment?
My advice would be reconciliation is possible. You deserve that in your life. But the most important thing for me is not to navigate that life alone. We have to be faithful, be available, and remain teachable. Be faithful in everything that you do. Be committed to the commitment. Be available, meaning show up. And then probably the most important thing is being teachable. Getting in an environment, getting in a small group, or getting a one-on-one coach, a mentor, someone that you will allow speak into your life so you can grab a hold of enough strength to reform your life into living the life that you want to live. It's possible. I get phone calls and text messages almost every other day from someone I had interaction with, whether it was in a juvenile detention center, a treatment facility, they're home from prison now, and they want to change in life. And the change is out there. There are a lot of programs, a lot of resources. You just have to be willing to ask for help, be vulnerable, be open, and those opportunities will come your way.
If you're not asking for the help that you need, how are you going to get it? And I know that sounds so almost elementary in some respects, but it's true.
Right, absolutely.
There is a vulnerability in having to ask. And there is a movement out there, and I think it's kind of gaining some momentum, sadly, which I don't understand how and why. It's almost like I don't need anyone else. I can do it myself. I can get centered myself. I can do all these things myself. And it's like, really, can you though? Because listen, by myself, I'm right every single time. I'm never wrong. But I think so many times when somebody else is around me, they can kind of push up against that. They can kind of rub up against that and say, actually, Neil, you might be wrong in this area. Have you thought about blah, blah, blah? I'm sure you never encounter that, right? Never, ever.
Man, just working past the shame, not waiting until you hit rock bottom, just making that choice and decision. You know, enough is enough. I know that I'm capable of doing much more in my life. I know I can be a better husband. I know I can be a better wife. I know I can be a better brother, sister, grandfather, uncle, grandmother. I know this. But how do I do it? It's important to grow with other people that are going where you want to go, or that are already doing the things that you want to do, and reach out to them. Don't grow alone. It's difficult growing alone. We were not created to live in isolation. My encouragement would be find someone that you can be vulnerable with.
Well, let's face it. We've all had siblings. We all have a brother or sister of some sorts. I know I had a brother. I know some are shocked by that, but it's true. I do. He's 2 years older. Undoubtedly, my freshman year of high school, little story of me, he was in the band. I was in the band. He was the drum major. I was not. But for those that don't know band dynamics, that means he was in charge of the whole stinking band. Whatever he told the band to do, the band did what he did.
Right.
And it sucks being the little brother. Let me just be candid. It is terrible being the little brother.
Yes,
do you have
it is.
any experience of this, of being the little brother, and how sucky and terrible it is, and how it maybe wrecks our identity in some respects?
Absolutely. I remember, I think I was a junior in high school. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. All of us played football, basketball, baseball. They all excelled. And there's a big age difference between me and my brothers. The brother that's right above me, he's 8 years older than I am. Then it goes to 9, then it goes to 12 years older than me. I remember specifically opening the newspaper. I had a good game. You know, as youngsters, you want to look in the newspaper. You're looking for your picture. I see my picture. And though it was an honest mistake, you know, you're reading the caption. You're looking for the article that says you did such and such. And so I look in the caption and it doesn't say Kevin Turner. It says Mike Turner. Now, again, I was a teenager. You know, you're looking to solidify or leave your mark. You're the youngest of 4 boys, small town. Everybody knows who the Turner family is. And for me, it wasn't just that the typing error was Mike. It was that, will I ever escape the shadows of living in my brother's footsteps? And as I got older, I realized the footprints and the footsteps were actually carrying me until I could find out who I was. And so, yes, it was difficult being the youngest brother, but that was something that stuck with me. And so when I moved to the Juvenile Detention Center, working in the prison system, that's an imprint and a feeling that I just didn't want other people feeling. And so I wanted to save space in that area to encourage other people, hey, man, you're built for this moment. You can redesign your life and unlimit your potential to pursue your purpose.
That's terrible. Was it like front page or was it like page 6? Help me with that.
It was page 2 of the sports page.
All right,
but
page 2. I mean, come on now.
Big picture, man.
Let me tell you, in all seriousness, I mean, it's fun to tease about that. I think I would be equally as hurt.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, I'm not him. And I can feel the pain in that, because I have a very similar pain. Granted, we were never like front page news in the band competitions.
Stop it.
Everybody compared me to my brother. Like, why can't you play the trumpet like your brother does? He doesn't even play the trumpet. And he's still better than you are, you know? And it was just like, listen, I'm not him.
Right.
I'm never going to be him. And I guess that's my question. Did you see in prison a lot of guys trying to be other guys and trying to like emulate their identity and emulate who they were because they felt like, well, if I'm like, you know, Jose over here or, you know, whoever, Robert, I'm making up names because I'm struggling with finding names. We used JoJo and all kinds of other people, but gotta spread some love around.
Right.
Did you ever experience that where guys were like trying to literally emulate another guy because they knew it would be safer, more comfortable, but yet they weren't comfortable in their own skin? And if so, what was that like?
Oh, absolutely. That was a constant, you know, especially for men. You know, anytime you get more than 2 men in a room, there's a lot of testosterone going around. We're trying to one-up each other all the time. And before you know it, all of us were the biggest drug dealers. I had 7 businesses. And then at the end of the day, with my experience, I was able to step back and look at it, pull them to the side and say, come on, man, if all of the top drug dealers are in prison, who are the people outside of prison? Stop it. Let's really dig deep in who we are and make a change while we're on this side of the desert, where this is an opportunity for you to look at yourself, change, because 9 times out of 10, somebody is dependent on you when you come home from prison, or somebody is dependent on you to change your life, because we're all connected to one another somehow, some way, some fashion. And so I've seen it quite a bit, the comparison game. Whether they were trying to survive or thrive, the comparison game was a daily occurrence in prison.
Well, and again, I would have just imagined that because I've been to men's groups at church, and it turns into that, right? You know, the one-upsmanship. You were all state. Well, I was all county.
Right.
I was all West Coast because I'm a West Coast guy, so I got to throw that in there. Well, I've read the Bible 6 times. Well, I've read it and memorized it in Aramaic.
Right.
Well, I know Jesus' name in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Now what? Let me be honest here for a second again. If you could somehow fix people in that way, would you want to, or does that help you in your process of trying to really reach them and be to them what you would, you know, bring the joy to them?
I do. I love working with people. I love witnessing them dig deep and figure out how can they turn it around. And then I like to look at myself as just a little sheepdog, you know, the little dog that's down there barking around the ankles and you're high stepping trying to get somewhere. That's how I kind of like to look at myself, just to be that positive reinforcement, to just kind of point you in the right direction, not walk for you, but walk with you. Because I think a lot of people, not just people that are in prison, I think a lot of people in general are hungry to live a better life, to lead a better life. I think we can do a better job of listening, learning, and leading by just asking great questions and then be in proximity, close proximity, to see people walk out their life. Man, that's a joy for me, witnessing someone turn their life completely around.
Yeah, because again, I think so many times we want to appear to be the bigger person. We want to appear to think like we have it all together, especially as guys. I know I'm a guy. I always want my stuff to look like it's pristine and together. And there's just this fake facade that comes with that. And I think what you're saying, at least what I'm hearing you say, is like there's such an authenticity to say, listen, I don't have it together. I don't. And it's okay because I'm trying every day to be a little bit better than I was yesterday.
And I think I was able to connect in my environments that I've worked in. I think I was able to connect because I would share that. I'm not a person that can hide my feelings. You can look at my face and tell what kind of day I'm having. For me, I think that was one way that allowed my influence to grow, as far as that's someone I can talk to, even though I'm probably not supposed to talk to him for too long. I know I can go over there for 2 minutes and get a quick encouraging word, and that'll hold me till I get back to my dorm or get back to my cell or get back to my family. And just being vulnerable, being open, and then at the same time letting them know this all is a part of life. No one has it all in. It may look well, but everyone is not well all the time. And so it's just important to be vulnerable, have those conversations, especially in small groups or one-on-ones. That's where real great, impactful work takes place.
Yeah, again, I think the big thing I would say is it is truly the one-on-one. It is truly the one-on-one that I think amazing things can truly happen. I've been in some circles where they're like, well, get this massive group in here and we want the numbers and we want to fill seats. But the reality of it all is that I think it all comes back down to, again, the idea of just that one-on-one intimate community and then building out from there. You know, what you did for this guy is amazing. Now that guy's been trained and equipped and now he can go do it for someone else. And I think there's power in that.
Absolutely. And that's what you want to see is each one teach one. We hear that phrase quite a bit, but it's very real in the incarceration world. And it's real in families as well. It's real in schools. Right now, youth are having a very difficult time coming out of COVID, readjusting, staying focused, getting better grades, having vision for what happens after high school. The more you can connect with someone through mentorship, having those conversations and connecting with someone that you can confide in, build that relationship with, especially one-on-one. And that was the one thing I enjoyed in prison was I did have those times and opportunities to speak with people one-on-one. And you're on a prison where there's, 400 or 500 prisoners or 1,000 or 2,000 prisoners. Somebody somewhere is going to see, hey, Kevin's over there talking to Officer Neal. He must be okay. And then, it just compounds from there.
Yeah, again, I think it's so valuable and important to really, take that time. I call them starfish moments, where you really just take that one-on-one time with somebody and really make an impact for them. And I think it's equally, sometimes just as impactful for that other person, for sure. Well, Kevin, before we jump out of here, I feel like it's only appropriate to give you an opportunity right now. If I, again, somehow, I got a lot of friends, as you've noticed. I've name dropped quite a few. I can't count how many we're up to now, but it's quite a few at least.
Yes, it's quite a few.
But I know Jerry Jones too. Like, we're tight. Him and I, we're super good friends.
Let's go. If
I put you at AT&T Stadium, big star there, stinking Dallas star. T.O., I think, did the thing. But if I put you there, I drop the lights, hand you a microphone, and I say, listen, you have an opportunity right now to talk to families who have been either had a loved one in incarceration or maybe a loved one has just gotten out of incarceration. So this is mainly for families, not for the inmates themselves.
Sure.
What do you say to those family members who are now, we'll say, lack of a better wording, welcoming back that loved one and how they should treat that said loved one? Again, we use Jerry's place because it's huge. A lot of people can get in there. What do you say?
Be open to allowing them to have their space because the adjustment it's almost unexplainable. You're coming from a place of pure trauma to a home. Probably one of the first visuals I would share is the lights do not go off in prison. And a lot of times when we go to bed, our homes are entirely dark. And if that happens, that would trigger a response in that man or woman that has just come home from prison. So that this is very sensitive. So to ask questions, give space, but then also find a strong support group to learn how to handle and reunify with your loved ones, because I see it every day. I've seen it every single day. And I know people have made some dangerous, critical mistakes, but no one wakes up saying, I'm going to prison today. It's the actual re-entry upon coming home, find it in our hearts to support them more than we want to see them struggle and fail.
Well, I think that's powerful to think about because, again, the whole idea for me in thinking about you and what you're about is this idea that you didn't allow somebody's bad choice to become your bad choice. Somebody's mistakes to influence you so much. Because let's face it, after 21 years, you can't help but have something splash on you. You can't help but take some of that home. I mean, you just can't. And I love the fact that you didn't do any of that you allowed, kind of those fingerprint moments to really make an impact on you.
Right.
Has there been, I'm sure there's been many, you kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, but has there been an inmate that you really, man, when you think back on, and you don't have to drop names by any means. I'm the name dropper. You don't have to. You can't take that from me. Sorry, Kevin. Has there been like an inmate that you're like, man, when I read from so-and-so, it just tore me up from the standpoint of I really did make a difference? Because let's face it, I would imagine every day it feels like you're building a sandcastle. Just as you get it built, something comes along and crushes it.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's one in particular, and this was recently. I received a message. He was a juvenile when we first had our first encounter, and that was over 30 years ago. And I received a message recently from him. He was just sharing with me how important it was for him to thank me for just being a listener when he was a juvenile. And he just celebrated his 44th birthday. And when I finished reading the message, what really turned my heart inside out was I'm only 9 years older than him. So when I was working at the Juvenile Detention Center, as a 22, 23-year-old, he wasn't that much younger than me. And so I started looking back over my career, and now he's married, he has children, working every single day. He's practicing good citizenship. But for him to reach out to me after more than 30 years, that just encouraged me to continue doing what I'm doing, because you just never know what seeds you're planting in someone's life. To that father, to that mother that may be trying to reach their teenager, keep planting those seeds, keep believing, and at some point you will see fruit come from the seeds that have been planted.
Yeah, but let's be honest. I mean, I struggle with peacock tendencies. I want everyone to know that it's about me. I want everyone to know that it's what I did. I spoke this amazing thing. I shared this amazing thought. I have this amazing podcast everyone should go and listen to and subscribe to. So I know you're not my dad or my minister or my counselor, but I would put you in the friend category or working your way towards that.
I appreciate that. I have on the light blue shirt.
You do. Yeah, that's why I said friend. You're working your way towards there. You're migrating down the board. Yeah, absolutely. But why is that dangerous in your mind? If I continue to have that mindset, if I was your friend and I came to you and I said, Kevin, I got this issue, what do you say to me?
That's dangerous in the sense of if I'm only serving you for my own well-being, we won't stay connected for very long. For one, you'll see it. For two, when you become that arrogant in yourself, they'll repel from you. And I don't ever want to be in that space. I don't want to have that feeling. I don't want to see that feeling. I don't know that feeling because I've seen enough situations. I've been in enough shoes to know that the breath that I still have in my lungs, it's not because of me. It's not because of me.
And see, I think that's the struggle I think a lot of folks struggle with, is this idea that it doesn't have to rise and fall on me. Kevin, before we go, how can someone get in touch with you if they're really excited about hearing from you? I know there's a book on the horizon. I've heard rumors. Our research team kicks over every rock, pushes over every tumbleweed, and knocks over every glass on its way to finding out everything about you. So tell me more about that.
They did a phenomenal job. Looking like summer or fall of 2023, my book will be out. The youth are really my heart. I loved working in the adult penal institution, but the youth, they're our future leaders. And so the book will be to reconcile incarcerated men and women with their families, to give a blueprint for our young youth and upcoming leaders to live an unlimited life. And so it's just not for people that are incarcerated. It's for people that may not know anything about prison. I'll have some personal stories in there, some experiences, and just be an open book to build that platform to work with educational leaders, student leadership, emerging leaders to live an unlimited life.
Because the whole idea is you want to live unlimited.
Absolutely.
Where does that come from, that unlimited life? Where was the brainstorm behind that?
Being in the prison environment, the incarcerated individuals or the officers working in a paramilitary side structure, it was very rigid, very structured. And when you're living a life that is unlimited, you know that there's more for you. You know you want to do more, and you start feeling smothered. And so as I had an opportunity, those that were incarcerated or the juvenile at the detention centers or in schools now, just to know that there's more for you and that you have an opportunity to pursue it. And although, again, I'll say it again, although it may start alone, it's very important not to grow alone, but to grow with someone else or a group of other people.
Well, Kevin, before we let you go, I feel like it's only fitting we do some silliness. How do you feel about some silliness?
Let's get silly. Let's get silly.
Let's get silly. So here we go. It's our silliness we like to call senseless. It is these 5 questions that involve our senses. And then the 6th is the wild card question. I did try to, speaking of Bezos, we talked about him moments ago. I did try to get an Oklahoma Sooners cup.
Man, stop it.
But apparently they were either A, sold out, or B, don't sell them. I'm not sure. But I was able, don't have a heart attack on me. I was able to get a North Carolina cup, oddly enough. I had one just sitting around. I don't know how I got one.
Right.
I have a few probably laying around somewhere. Anyway, I'm going to roll. Are you okay if I roll for you and think I'm not going to cheat you in the silliness here?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to roll for you. And is this question right here? Look, it's even a light blue 5. How fun is that?
Wow. Imagine that.
North Carolina die, just so you know. Yeah, they make those. Yeah. Came out of a Yahtzee game. Into my game. So, I mean, not a game, so our silliness. So number 5 is this. It's fun, especially with being in Texas. I'm sure this has probably happened a time or two. What is something you taste that you always seem to get a reaction to?
Sour candy.
Okay, final answer. Sour candy. Now, are we talking like sour gummy worms? Are we talking those warheads from back in the day? I saw those on the Halloween circuit this last Halloween. So
the Apple Jolly Rancher.
The Apple Jolly Rancher is sour to you?
Yes.
A little bit of judgment. It's not very sour. Sorry.
It's sour.
Can't hide that.
It's sour.
It's sour to you, though.
Yeah.
Kevin, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I really appreciate you, man. You're an amazing guy. I've really enjoyed our time together today.
Thank you for having me, Neil. I really, truly appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that is it. That is all. That is our show today. I don't know about anybody else. I really walked away kind of feeling a little bit like I need to, one, examine my fingerprints. And I'll tell you why. Here's what my mind started going to when we kind of had that fingerprint conversation. What have my fingerprints been a part of? Have they been a part of bringing life? Or have my fingerprints been a part of bringing death or discouragement or despair or disregard or disdain or disrespect or disloyalty? So here's my challenge for you today as we get out of here. And that's this. Who in your life right now, close your eyes maybe if you're driving. I don't recommend that. But if you're not driving, maybe just take a moment. Who right now, if you were to close your eyes and say, that person I have treated with disdain, with disrespect, and my fingerprints are all over them. It's a crime scene there. The thoughts that I've had for them, I probably should be in jail because I've murdered them with my thoughts. Does that person deserve any type of repentance from you? Any type of rehabilitation? And listen, I know some of you have been hurt, major hurt. Dad, mom, aunts, uncles, coworkers, bosses, old jobs, whoever. But I just want to ask you this question. Can you give a chance to have a restoration? Can you do that? And if you do, I sure as heck would love to know, because I think there's unlimited potential for that. There just is. As long as you have a breath, there's unlimited potential to restore what has been broken. And you don't have to live in that nightmare of a jail cell any longer. Let that be our challenge for this week. If you do it, of course, I'd love to know. OPSpodcast.com. You can let me know there. You can let us know on social medias at OPS Podcast Show. And until next week, don't forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.